Here's a number I want you to think about for a second. 160 acres. That's 1/4 of a square mile. It's roughly 120 football fields laid side by side, and every single spring, tens of thousands of farmers across America plant that exact amount, or close to it, in corn. Now here's the question nobody seems to want to answer straight. Is it actually profitable? Or are these farmers just spinning their wheels, feeding the land, and watching their bank accounts slowly drain? Because here's what most people outside of agriculture don't understand. Growing corn isn't just throwing some seeds in the ground and waiting for it to rain. It is a full-blown business operation. We're talking six-figure input costs, unpredictable weather, commodity markets that can flip on you overnight, and government programs that can be the difference between a good year and a devastating one. So today, we are going to break down every single dollar it costs to grow 160 acres of corn in 2026. We're going to look at what you can realistically expect to earn, what your profit or loss looks like at the end of the season, and the lessons that every single person watching this, whether you're a farmer, an investor, or just curious, needs to understand about how food actually gets made in this country. Stick with me. The numbers are going to surprise you. Make sure to watch till the end to get the final answer. Hi, this is Acre Ledger, the YouTube channel dedicated to educating and inspiring the next generation of farmers. No matter how large or small your dream operation is, with a little guidance, it can become reality. Make sure to like and subscribe to stay connected in the worlds of farming and finance. Section 1. Setting the stage. Before we get into the math, let's make sure we're all on the same page, because if you're brand new to agriculture, some of this might feel like a foreign language. 160 acres is considered a small to mid-size farm operation in the Corn Belt. The Corn Belt is the nickname for the region of the United States. Think Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Nebraska, and parts of Ohio and Missouri, where the soil and climate are ideal for growing corn. Now, corn is what's called a commodity crop. That means it's not being sold directly at a farmer's market or a grocery store with a label on it. It goes to grain elevators, those big tower-looking structures you see along rural highways. And from there, it gets sold on a futures market where the price is set based on global supply and demand. Here's your first lesson. Farmers are price takers, not price makers. Unlike a business owner who sets their own prices, a corn farmer has almost zero control over what a bushel of corn sells for. The market decides that, which means a farmer's only real financial lever is controlling their costs. That's why understanding every single input expense is not just helpful, it is survival. Now let's get into the numbers. Section 2, the cost side. All right, let's build this out cost by cost. Pull up a notepad if you want to follow along. For 160 acres of corn in 2026, here is what a typical Midwest farmer is looking at. Seed. Let's start with seed. Modern corn seed is not cheap. We're talking about genetically developed hybrids that are engineered for high yields, disease resistance, and drought tolerance. In 2026, corn seed runs anywhere from $280 to $380 per bag. One bag plants roughly 2.5 acres. So for 160 acres, you're looking at about 64 bags. At $330 per bag on average, that's $21,120 in seed alone. Fertilizer. Here's where it gets expensive fast. Corn is what farmers call a heavy feeder. It pulls an enormous amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium out of the soil. And every pound that comes out has to go back in if you want a good crop next year. The three main fertilizers are nitrogen, phosphorus, as DAP or MAP, and potassium, as potash. For 160 acres at 2026 prices, nitrogen, roughly $95 per acre, $15,200 total. Phosphorus, roughly $45 per acre, $7,200 total. Potassium, roughly $38 per acre, $6,080 total. Total fertilizer cost, approximately $28,480. Here's your next lesson. Fertilizer is the single biggest variable cost in corn production, and it's tied to global energy prices. Nitrogen fertilizer is made from natural gas, so when natural gas prices spike, like they did in 2022, fertilizer costs can literally double in a single year. Smart farmers lock in fertilizer prices early, sometimes 6 to 12 months in advance. It's called forward contracting, and it's one of the most important risk management tools in agriculture. Crop protection, herbicides and pesticides. Cornfields don't take care of themselves. Weeds compete for nutrients. Insects chew through leaves and roots. Fungal diseases can wipe out yields if left unchecked. For 160 acres, herbicides, approximately $38 per acre, $6,080 total. Insecticides and fungicides, approximately $22 per acre, $3,520 total. Total crop protection, approximately $9,600. Crop insurance. This one surprises a lot of people outside of farming, but crop insurance is not optional for most operations. It's what keeps a single bad weather year from ending a farming career entirely. Federal crop insurance in 2026 runs around $28 to $40 per acre, depending on your coverage level and county. At $34 per acre, $5,440 total. Land cost, cash rent. Now here's the big one that a lot of YouTube videos gloss over. If you don't own the land, and the majority of Midwest farmland is rented, not owned, you're paying cash rent. In the heart of the Corn Belt in 2026, cash rent averages anywhere from $180 to $320 per acre, depending on soil quality and location. Let's use $240 per acre as our middle ground number. For 160 acres, $38,400 in land rent. That's your single largest expense, and it goes out the door before you plant a single seed. Machinery and fuel. Whether you own your equipment or hire custom operators, the cost of getting a crop in the ground and back out at harvest is significant. Tillage, planting, spraying, and harvest, approximately $95 per acre. Fuel, approximately $18 per acre. Total machinery and fuel, approximately $18,080. Drying and storage. Corn comes out of the field in the fall at a moisture content that's too high to store, typically 20 to 25% moisture. It needs to be dried down to around 14 to 15% before storage or sale. That process costs money. Drying and hauling, approximately $22 per acre, $3,520 total. Miscellaneous, interest, scouting, consulting. Every operation has overhead costs that don't fit neatly into one category. Operating loan interest, agronomist scouting fees, accounting, and miscellaneous repairs, budget roughly $18 per acre. Miscellaneous, $2,880. Section 3. The revenue side. All right. Now the question you've been waiting for. What does 160 acres of corn actually bring in? Two variables control your revenue: yield and price. Yield is how many bushels of corn you harvest per acre. In the Corn Belt on productive ground, a solid farmer targets 180 to 220 bushels per acre. Let's use three scenarios. Price is what you sell corn for, measured in dollars per bushel. In 2026, corn prices have been trading in a range of roughly $4.20 to $5.10 per bushel, depending on timing and basis. Let's run three scenarios: a tough year, an average year, and a great year. Scenario 1, tough year. Yield, 165 bushels per acre. Price, $4.25 per bushel. Revenue per acre, $701.25. Total revenue, $112,200. Total costs, $127,520. Net result, minus $15,320. loss. Scenario 2, average year. Yield, 195 bushels per acre. Price, $4.60 per bushel. Revenue per acre, $897. Total revenue, $143,520. Total costs, $127,520. Net result, plus $16,000 profit. Scenario 3, great year. Yield, 220 bushels per acre. Price, $5 per bushel. Revenue per acre, $1,100. Total revenue, $176,000. Total costs, $127,520. Net result, plus $48,480 profit. The margin between a profitable corn year and a losing corn year is razor thin, and it can hinge on a single drought week in July or a single bad week in the commodity market. This is why farmers obsess over weather forecasts, why they watch the Chicago Board of Trade like some people watch the stock market, and why they hedge their grain sales months in advance. The good ones are not just farmers. They are commodity traders, weather analysts, and business managers all wrapped into one. Section 4, the bigger picture. Now let me give you some context, because those profit numbers can feel misleading if you look at them in isolation. First, most farmers are not farming just 160 acres. They're farming 500, 800, 1,500, or even 5,000 acres. The profit per acre stays relatively similar, but the scale multiplies it. A farmer clearing $100 per acre profit across 1,500 acres is clearing $150,000 before he pays himself. Second, many farmers own their own land. If you own your 160 acres outright, that $38,400 cash rent line disappears entirely. And suddenly your cost per acre drops to around $557 per acre. That changes everything. At an average yield and average price, a land-owning farmer on those same 160 acres clears closer to $54,000 in profit. Land ownership is the great multiplier in agriculture. It is the difference between scraping by and building wealth across generations. This is exactly why the acre ledger philosophy exists. Understanding not just how to grow crops, but how to strategically acquire land, manage costs, and build a real financial future in agriculture. Third, government programs like ARC and PLC through the USDA's Farm Bill provide a financial safety net that kicks in when prices or revenues drop below a certain threshold. These payments can add anywhere from $15 to $60 per acre in a tough year, which can be the difference between survival and bankruptcy. Section 5, final takeaway. So let's bring this full circle. Is 160 acres of corn profitable in 2026? The answer is, it depends. And that's not a cop-out. That's the honest truth of modern agriculture. With average yields, average prices, and rented land, you're looking at a profit somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000 for a year's worth of work. On owned land, that climbs significantly. In a bad weather year, or when markets collapse, that same operation loses money. But here's the thing, and this is the final lesson I want to leave you with. The farmers who survive and thrive over decades are not the ones who get lucky with weather. They're the ones who obsessively manage their costs, hedge their risk, own their land, and never stop learning. Every dollar saved on fertilizer by buying at the right time. Every bushel sold at the right price by using futures. Every acre of land purchased instead of rented. That's how a 160-acre operation becomes 400 acres, and 400 becomes 1,000, and a struggling farm becomes a family legacy. That's what Acre Ledger is about. Not just the crops, the strategy behind them. If this video helped you understand the economics of farming in a way you never had before, hit that subscribe button. Because every week we break down the financial side of agriculture in a way that actually makes sense. Whether you're a farmer, someone thinking about buying land, or just someone who wants to understand where your food really comes from. I'll see you in the next one.